So then, yeah, 3, 2. Hey, all right. Let's want to welcome you to episode 3.
I'm telling you.
I'm telling you. Chef Philly D.
Gemini in the house.
Yeah, we're so we finished our green room session. So those of you who follow along and know what's what, we came out of it.
What?
Green room episode 2.
What's what? What?
Consciousness. I think that's where we're at on it, right? We agreed we're gonna talk about consciousness. We started getting in serious. You brought up dogs and awareness, and I pretty much disproved my own statement, and so we left it at that. And we're trying to figure it out now, as any of us do. So let's talk about consciousness. That's a great conversation. Yeah, I think we were at where you were. The dog.
What was that? I forgot. I don't know. Like 10 million years seems like a big amount of time, but apparently in the evolutionary scheme of things, it's not. It's a rather short period of time, and apparently, the primitive man,
Cro-Magnon.
Whatever.
Right.
Yeah. To modern man.
Yeah, before we had Homo erectus and then Homo sapien, and
within that short 10 million year period of time, like tripled in brain size or something like that. And there are people out there that attribute that quite possibly was expanded due to naturally occurring mind altering substances within the environment.
Right. So instead of saying aliens came down and messed with our DNA, it's like, hey, we as creatures of this area ate something or ingested something somehow, and it expanded our mind, literally, because we internally could now be conscious, right? So that's what we're debating here. But with that awareness began, larger capacity for knowledge, which meant that our brains were literally growing. And they needed a larger skull to support it, right? Is that?
Well, I mean, you start studying these things and you realize that you have like an increased sensitivity to light. So I mean, even to the receptor level within your eyes, you become more acutely aware of your surroundings. Your sense of smell gets a little keener.
What are we talking? Like, where is this based from?
Mushrooms. Hunters used to use.
So you're saying on like psilocybin, like the typical, or is this like a special? I mean.
Well, psilocybin being the.
Yeah, psilocybin. Thank you.
So what is it? Psilocybin and psilocybin, with the two main like active ingredients in the common. Stropharia cubensis, I think, is the standard.
Dude, that's way more than I know, man. You got me, bro.
Bag of shrooms, which household mushrooms that you think of.
Yeah, fact checker on that. That'd be great. But that's basically what we're talking about, is the typical average, what we know as mind-altering, magic mushrooms. We as a race ingested them at some point, causing us to open our consciousness, literally to, engulf it or be a part of it. I mean, that in and of itself, that modified us to be these intelligent beings now.
Well, I was saying even like early hunters, even before we came more of an agrarian society, like when we were still hunter-gathering.
Right. We weren't doing agriculture and like water conservation, like we weren't, right?
Right, but we'd actually microdose. And you take a very small amount
intentionally.
Intentionally, while you're basically in meditation, waiting to come across your hunt.
Is this a hypothesis, or is there reports on this? Like, is there any evidence that backs this up? Because I think, there's some. It sounds like there's some truth to this.
I'm curious where it all comes from, but this is a lot
specific
of that
idea.
Terrance McKenna's stuff. So I don't know wherever they got,
So you heard this from some this is a Terrance McKenna thing that you're
speeches and I read one of his books and
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is that what you're basically quoting your knowledge of this from?
Yeah,
so it's not
I
like
believe
your
that's-
hypothesis. This is a known hypothesis, and this is one that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, like, how did he come across all the information? I'm sure there's a way to find that out, but I don't know. This is, I think you still have the book. Is it?
I have, I don't know, what book?
You're borrowing it.
Which one?
The Terrance McKenna book.
That may or may not be on the shelf. That might. Honestly,
I can't remember the name of it now, but
that's probably in the other room because I have a stack of books that I'm in the midst of. So it's in that. So it's probably in the other.
there.
Yeah, it's on the other shelf.
Anyhow,
I'll have to look for that after this then. Well, but
Yeah.
that's what you're basing this information off of is, from your readings or hearing his speeches and whatnot. This is an idea that's being passed around.
I mean, some of the information as far as what we can gather about how these ancient cultures would do things, and I don't know if he was saying it was found somehow in, on their person in their burial site or what it was, but there was somehow they linked it to the.
Okay.
I'm not sure. That's
Right,
a
right,
really
right.
good question.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah.
Well, to me, it's not so much like, hey, do you have evidence to support this? It was more of just like, is this more than just a hypothesis? Like, there's people out there that are attempting to make evidence to support this. Was more of the question, not so much like, can you dispense this knowledge now? If you could, awesome. But yeah, no. So
I'm sorry.
So this is.
So
this is an idea.
a lot of a great deal of the things that Terrance McKenna talks about were basically based on firsthand experience from when, like, he traveled the world, like, looking into all these different things, and this is where he came up with this. This is where he came up with this hypothesis that man's jump, his crazy leap in brain size, and this whole time period. That's where you can physically mark the jump from what we were kind of referring to from standard animal consciousness to, like, the conscious attention, like
actually being aware of your awareness. Like you're aware now, right?
Well, not just to know that you are and that you feel, but to know that you know that you
do, and that others might as well.
It's like looking into a mirror that's also in a mirror is behind you, and then you get that repeating image.
Yeah.
But the man's ability to reflect on himself. I mean, the mirror image repeating is always a favorite of mine in trying to think about the whole process of looking within, because it is kind of a spooky, like, catches you right here when you think that.
I would say if you were impeccably doing so, like if you're honestly looking inward of your proper self-reflection, like actual, true, honest, digging deep, yeah, dude, that's freaky. That is not for the faint of heart. I will be honest right there. I've done quite a few of those moments. I think that was a side conversation, but yeah, there's been many times I have entered my pain to look for growth. And yeah, I'll repeat, not for the faint of heart. That's some serious honesty right there. And two ways come out of it. You either come out becoming more transcendent and open, or more closed off and possibly really negative. It's the only outcomes I've ever seen, like, trying to go inward like that. Because you start to either figure stuff out and you're just like, you know what? Now you start cheating a little bit, you know what I mean? Because you're like, it doesn't really... You start to skew a bit, but go ahead.
I Am, the book.
Right.
Like, he kind of chalks that up to, he says, basically that means that, the longer and more suffering you go through to get to a concept, the more you're resisting the truth of that concept. That basically it's...
I just got Job in the well, right? Or you get Pinocchio going to get his dad or whatever. You're not following your path, and all of a sudden it's like you're now in the belly of the beast because you're just surrounded by negativity, right? Is that...
Well, yeah, I mean, and so much of that is that's a psychological. It's not necessarily...
that's a physical manifestation of that idea, right?
It's a physical manifestation of a psychological occurrence. Like, a point you reach where you're so low that you feel basically like you've been swallowed up by it all. Like you... And the reason that becomes... And here's a Jordan Peterson kind of moment. The reason that becomes so apparent is because you're in a heightened state of awareness, first of all, at that moment. Like, you find yourself basically surrounded by the darkness in the belly of the beast, like you said. And that's where you have a transcendent moment, because it puts you outside of yourself. It forces you outside of yourself.
Yeah.
So any kind of life occurrence, that puts you in a way that you can, like I said, look at a mirror. It's a way of being able to see, like, why did I just get a flash of Being John Malkovich? Great retarded movie. Oh my god.
Because I think there's some correlations to be drawn from that, and the idea of stepping into alternate realities, in a sense, to have alternate perceptions, which I think kind of points really to, like you said, being aware of, like, hey, I'm a fly, I would have to be like this. So the fact that I can actually think how a fly would think, that makes me conscious.
Well, that the argument there was that, and I don't know what to quote that argument as, but the argument was there's an experience that you could say what it's like to be something, then that's a form of consciousness. Like, so to some extent, that's kind of a stretch to imagine a stone as having a consciousness, but some could say on some level, because there's motion at the atomic level, that in a way there is, wherever there is life, there is consciousness. And technically, in order to have matter, it's something has to be in motion, which is the really weird concept a lot of people can't wrap their mind around, that a stone that seems not to change for hundreds of years can actually be moving all the time. It's living in a sense of its own.
Right.
In a way you could say, because that contains metachlorians, to go nerdy on you, that is also part of life. So you can look at it all the way on that side of the scale, or you can look at all the way on the other side of the scale, where it's like, only higher beings have the ability to have consciousness. But I think it's more of a gray scale to some extent. Like, we're all just patterns, man.
We're all a bunch of molecules vibrating.
We're all just patterns. But yes, the human species stands alone in that we have the ability to reflect on ourselves. We have the ability to, the thought of a mirror always comes to mind. Like, that's...
I get it. And that's definitely one heck of a way to express the idea of what consciousness is, I suppose. Because there's certainly a multitude of options here.
And that goes right back to the principle, I'm not getting thirsty, behind the whole idea of what we're doing here.
Opening that consciousness even further, being more aware, more helpful, more,
Well, because if you look at it this way, like, I have to be alone for a good portion of the time to be able to have these thoughts, so that I could bring it into a conversation. Like I said, I play these little thought games, like these little thought experiments, I was saying, in my mind, where you'll just you'll run a thought to, what's the time? I really need to take a drink. Hold on.
Yeah, that's, it sounds like you're about to get deep and heavy. Yeah, you might as well Yeah.
Oh, it's just my
Hydrate.
throat
Gotta
is
hydrate.
starting to... Well, anyhow. All right, put me back on track. Where was I?
Relative consciousness coming out of fungus started, Terrance McKenna. Now we're going into that progression.
Oh, it was something about a grayscale and...
Correct.
Yeah.
The fact of a rock with its motion due to molecules, and therefore it is living.
Yeah, I mean, there are some that would argue, to some extent, on some level, a stone has consciousness. But the argument, the more important thing that we're discussing right now, is the end result. Humanity has been gifted with a different level of intelligence, the ability to reflect on oneself, but that is a double-edged sword too, because in self-reflection then you can get caught in a catch-22, and
psychology would call that neuroses. Self-induced issues.
Exactly. So yeah, I love how you're following right along with me. Mm-hmm. So anyway,
well, yeah, and so I would say I have to agree to, quite a bit of all of that. The bigger point being, I agree to the fact that if we did consume these mushrooms, which it just seems natural, right? Because we have evidence of like monkeys drinking the fermented fruit or whatever, and they're having a good old time, right? So we're aware of other species that seem to show established intelligence, because they have tools. That's what we call intelligence, right? They can make tools and use them. So to me, the idea of not being alien DNA modified, but being fungus, ingested, modified over generations. To me, I could say something like, as technology advances, it's exponential. It seems to be growing quicker and quicker and quicker, and it's just eventually you get to a point where it's either going to tap out, or we don't know, and it's just going to keep going like crazy. But in that sense, as we start to become aware, all of those things that we do to gain that awareness then starts to add other components, and then they just start to build. And before you know it, now we have DNA modified, evolution-wise, right? Mm-hmm. Darwinianism on top of all of this knowledge that we've gained. So even without the alien influence idea, just the fact of ingesting fungus for maybe a few generations.
that was something Darwin really didn't see coming.
Maybe.
I mean, but
that's beautiful though. I like this idea.
Not
that I'm against the alien idea either. I just as far as like ideas go for explanations of that exponential growth of our knowledge ability, that's pretty dope. I like that.
But as far as I know, that was Terrance McKenna's, not his axe to grind, but I think that was his big thesis. I don't know if it was a life thesis, but it was one of his great life's works, was in trying to draw a correlation between the sudden rise and increase in the nature of man's consciousness and its connection to naturally occurring hallucinogenics within the environment, including was it ergot? Ergot, I think that's when like was it rye or barley or something like that will get like it'll get a mold or fungus on it.
Okay.
And
yeah, I'm recalling from documentaries I've seen about this.
It's a particular kind that like it was old cases of hysteria from like the 1800s, like where women ingested bread that was basically ergot poisoned, or I think it was ergot. I think that's the term.
It sounds like Children of the Corn stuff.
But it's very much it's a hallucinogenic.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that Children of the Corn, because the corn was technically molded or something, or had like funky spray on it, or
is that where the principle of that came from? I wasn't aware.
Yeah, because of that, the kids turned and started killing the parents and stuff, because God told them to, or God told the leader who told the kids to do it.
That's what I was trying to say. That's where I was just saying, where you take an idea and you follow it all the way down the path ad absurdum. to the point where it reaches something like that. Like, okay, it's basically created a society of zombies. You know, like, that's hilarious. But it's funny. It makes me wonder to some extent how much the media has programmed the criminal aspect that we view these drugs through. I mean, because most people don't even want to have this conversation because, well, now we're talking about a highly controlled substance that's in a lot of people's
Colorado
eyes.
is allowed for medicinal. I think mushrooms are now actually it might even be recreational as well.
I mean,
that's somebody fact checked that.
Technically speaking, if you can
I'm
prove
pretty sure
if you
mushrooms
can
are
prove
legal.
if you can prove that it's part of your spiritual process, there's really not a whole lot that they can do about keeping you from doing it. But you know,
Yeah, I think that was actually some of the original loopholes for people trying to support legal medicinal / recreational use of cannabis, is they made it a part of their church. I think that was the thing. Because you're right, because then it's religious persecution if you're not allowing me to fulfill my...
I mean, I was actually looking into it. There are some, and I don't know where. I mean, it's not necessarily like you can go right around the corner and find it, but that there are some branches of Christian churches that have risen up around the use of ayahuasca. So they'll bring it into the States, and literally you can do it if you're a member of that church. You fall under the protection of the church, and you can do it for religious reasons. Which, honestly, that's why I would do it anyway. You know, I wouldn't do it. It's not the kind of thing you go to a party like, yeah, I'm gonna do ayahuasca. Like,
So, well, yeah, interesting point on that. There was, I'm recalling Graham Hancock and Joe Rogan talking about how if you, as a political individual, being, you know, of any position or office, the only way that you can even run, like literally be in the actual runoff, you know, for the vote, so for you to even be considered as a candidate, like not even to get, just to be considered as a candidate so you can put yourself in, they're like, you need to do at least like 12 ayahuasca trips, and we have to watch you do it, as like this is how much you get, and there's a shaman there to make sure it's a positive thing, and like this.
You're saying they wanted to make this rule, or this actually?
Yeah, pretty much. Like if you're gonna run for, you know, mayor, Congress, like you would have to have.
If you can survive that.
Well, no, totally under. Again, proper shaman. Good,
well, absolutely.
Good vibes. Like,
but the thing,
they're not like, hey, we want to F with you. It's like, hey, we want to make sure you're honest.
No,
and
it's
open.
like scrubbing you clean.
Yeah, you're aware. You're filtered. You're, you know,
well, like, you know, and here's the thing. Like, from an outsider's perspective, it's like, okay, well, you're half naked in the middle of the jungle. It's really hot. You do like lots of crazy drugs. You're fasting, because you're basically fasting on nothing but like. It's basically fish and rice that you're allowed to eat or something like that, and it's all plain. Like, you can't have salt and pepper, you can't have seasoning, you can't have hot sauce, you can't drink alcohol, you can't.
Well, I watched the movie.
So yeah, hell yeah, you're hallucinating. But it's you know, people that are looking at it from the outside, they're like, how can that be healthy? You're sitting there smoking these giant cigarettes, and it's like, well, first off, that's not the same kind of tobacco that we use here.
Well, so that was going to be my point. So I had seen a movie and then turned it on to you, and then you and I have both seen this movie now a couple of times.
Wow.
The movie is called The Last Shaman. The thing that I took away as the most beautiful, and for me, just being the type of person that I am, where I want to be healing for myself and anything around me. Like, I'm always trying to be positive and, you know, have that healing vibe and just like, hey, we can all do this, and we can work together. Like, just we support and sharpen one another, and, you know, humble and, you know, ego aside. A true shaman, and this is what they said in the movie, because this is more of a documentary than you know, an actual. It's almost biographical, like real time, not so much.
I certainly hope it's accurate and true. It comes off that way.
I feel that too. But the great thing that I felt was they said a true shaman will not charge you, right? Like, they're not doing this for any money. There's no money in being a true shaman. So first of all, if you really want to get healed, you're supposed to find a true shaman, meaning they're not going to make you pay. right? Because that's proper healing to them. It's like, hey, if I'm really going to heal you, I can't take anything other than what you're giving, because that's really what it is. It's that balance of give and take. I'm helping you to purify yourself. You're giving of yourself, and then you get to take knowledge with you. Like, you get to take a consciousness and awareness with you. I thought that was beautiful, because that was the big point to me was, one, again, not going to charge you. That really speaks to me, because it's like, dude, there's things that I do personally that I'm like, I could never ask to, you know, I fix people's this, that, whatever. You know, I'm capable of doing this thing. I wouldn't charge my friends. I'm just going to come over and take care of them. They know this. But then they buy me dinner or something, and that's beautiful.
Well, it's interesting when you come out of this whole experience, because it is an experience. It's like if you've ever seen Basketball Diaries, which I saw in the theater when it first came out. But it puts you there. You know what I mean? It puts you in the action, so to speak.
What does?
Anyway. Man.
Yeah, we were talking about ayahuasca and gaining consciousness from it.
I'm trying to think where I was going with all that, though.
Yeah, I sidetracked you with the doing with the political office.
No, it's okay. It's so easy to do, because I get so in my head sometimes, and sometimes I was telling you, like, I'll be going in 3 different directions, and I'm like, okay, shh.
You always keep telling me, yeah, thank you for corralling me back in. It's like, somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah, it's like you gotta just kind of lasso my neck and just pull me. Like, dude, hey, where did you? Forget it. Anyway, so we were talking about
ayahuasca and being a part of a church that makes it a
I wasn't
sacrament and all that.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything else to prove aside from it's
well, yeah, and
it's interesting how
I'll continue
natural law
on.
starts to take over.
Graham Hancock, very intelligent man. If you all have never heard of Graham Hancock, check him out. He's really intelligent. He's very thoughtful in his hypothesis. His attempts to theorize these it's very, very methodical and intelligent, and almost to the point that he's trying to make sure that he's disproving himself if he can. Like, it's like, dude, no other choice makes sense now but this. I'm sorry. Like, he almost works against himself. Like, that's how intelligent he is, where it's like, dude, I'm sorry, there's no other explanation at this point. Like, I've worked myself into a corner. Like, very intelligent guy. But he goes on to explain how ayahuasca specifically, first of all, most don't know this, you're taking a root and a bark, basically, and boiling together in a tea with, a few other things, but that's...
It's a vine and, the leaves.
Correct. Yeah.
But on the one case, and that's the funny thing, like Terrance McKenna was saying, that because his whole search, when he ended up on the whole mushroom kick, that was on his way to look for ayahuasca, and he was one of the first people in the West scientifically to go out there to try and document what was going on with these old tribes. And he said what's amazing about it is, because the question inevitably comes up is who figured out to mix these 2 ingredients? Because what you have on the one hand is a vine that appears to be extremely ordinary and looks like any other viney,
Well, that's exactly it, right? So,
but you isolate only the vine and none of the leafy substance. You actually chop all that off.
Right. That's why I'm saying the bark, the exterior of it. So you're
well, it's not just the bark.
skin.
You're taking the whole vine and you're beating it and you're throwing it into a stew pot. But on the other hand, the other plant you're taking only the leaves and leaving everything else.
Right.
So it's like,
not root, leaf. Correct.
How did you figure this out? And it's like, well, if you ask the shamans, the plants told us.
Correct. Yeah. The forest fed. They're like, yeah, no, bro, over here. Like, yeah.
So,
yeah, I've heard this part of the story. I agree. Because that was your statement of, being conscious beforehand of originally was the mushroom. Because I think we did this off the mics, was the fields with the grass that the buffalo ate, that pooped, that made the mushrooms that the hunters ate, which the cattle would have also eaten, and this almost started the ability to kind of like
it created
transcend knowledge together. Yeah, there was an understanding from animal to man at that point, in a sense, right?
I mean, sure, imagine it. I mean,
I'm gonna go back to Avatar because it's like you can actually they would connect the tails or I forget what the exact terms were. Somebody's gonna hate me.
There probably is a parallel there, honestly, because you even mentioned the same thing yourself, that one of the running theme in that movie very much mirrored the whole. And here's the whole argument: is that those. I'm gonna get busted getting this word wrong. I should probably we need somebody looking it up. But those little tendrils that grow not from the mushroom, the part that you see, but the mother plant beneath, which is where the mushroom, where it comes from.
Yeah, the roots, in a sense.
That has a very intricate rooting system that, like I said, basically, I mean, it can communicate with other fungal networks from miles away. That there's, and that structure and the way that it intertwines and communicates and creates multiple layers of communication. So even where it fails in one place, it can reroute. It mirrors the human neural network.
Well, I think that goes back to the whole Fibonacci thing too, right?
I mean, is it just coincidence, or is it maybe the mushroom has been teaching us all along? The mushroom has been saying, no, you can route all here, and here. You don't have to just keep it just to a quick, that's the weird thing about things. Something fires slightly differently in your brain, and suddenly it becomes easier to fire it that way the next time, and the next time, and the next time. And that's where you're gaining new knowledge. You're learning, discovering something new. You're stepping outside of yourself yet again. Here I'm saying that again. You've got a plant now that's allowing you to step outside of yourself and look and see, I need to survive not only today, but next week, next month, next year. How do I get there? I've got, a family. Like, obviously, you're not always talking, we're going back prehistory here. It's not like there's a language per se. But it's like, I've got a family to maintain. How do I do this? How do I start planning this out? Like this, none of this was thought of before. That his argument is that these kind of plants were here, kind of thrust us into this self-discovery mode. Like, it was neural networks that had never been in existence started forming new pathways. And
I just had the story of eating the forbidden fruit and gaining the knowledge.
Sure, there's a parallel there.
Right. That literally popped into my mind.
It's been suggested by some that could have been. See, that can be broken down in all different terms. But yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't an apple. Okay.
Okay. Certainly not an apple. Okay. Maybe it was an apple, and the apple had fallen.
Well, I don't know.
Fermented. I don't know. Well, they said they picked it, so.
Well, apples are from Kazakhstan.
Why don't I just they might be giants? Constantinople.
I don't know.
That happened. I went there for a second.
I heard that somewhere that
Kazakhstan.
as all American as apples are, but if you go back there, that's the whole thing about Johnny Appleseed, that apples did not exist in the United States.
Well, Columbus brought swine with him. He brought pigs over. And that's why we have pigs in North and South America now. Apparently, right?
Swine.
You heard that, right?
Is that okay? I guess I don't know. I'm a history buff when it comes to certain things, but not others. So it's weird.
Yeah, I believe that was one of the things. Is maybe it wasn't Columbus. Who was before Columbus? I think he did. Oh yeah, no. The one that because of them they wiped out. Basically, they wiped out the Aztecs and whatever because of smallpox and stuff. Cortez. I think Cortez brought swine with him. He brought the pigs. If I recall correctly.
Ooh.
Yeah. Somebody, if you go ahead and
Anyway,
pop in the comments, tell me the correct thing. But yeah, I believe it was Cortez at that point. Yeah, if I'm recalling that history correct. So yeah,
we need that fact checker.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I recall this from John Leguizamo's history. He did one of his a couple of years ago, I think, not that long ago. He basically did like the history of Latin America, or Latinos, and the true history. And that's bringing in like Cortez and like where they came from, which it was a great history in and of itself. There was also I've done a few documentaries on like tacos and stuff and where all that came from, which is kind of the original to what is it, carnitas, because they did have the pig. Instead it was supposed to be lamb, like carnitas. It's supposed to be like a Lebanese taco, but then it's that cooking style in a pot of all of the animal. The bones, the all the meat, the fat, everything, just letting it all kind of cook in and on itself. Yeah, that's dope stuff, man. But so where were we going with? I know we got totally off track on that one, but
I don't know.
But yeah, so finding the combinations for ayahuasca, right? As
yeah, that it was actually the plants that told.
Right, and then
the
we get
early medicine men,
and how the mushroom has what seems to be a mimic of the neural connection or neural.
Yeah, so
same as humans, and then the inherent knowledge that comes from that. So
wasn't as much of the. It seems that with ayahuasca, there's a strong lean towards a connection with a feminine spirit specifically.
And I never finished with that. The Graham Hancock thing, his expression of ayahuasca, as well as I believe certain mushrooms and a few other things, is that it allows for DMT, to literally be, because that DMT is technically not digestible by our gut, but doing the ayahuasca allows it to be. Whereas doing like actual DMT, like smoking it, the dragon's vapor or whatever they call it.
I forget which is which, but the one ingredient, so whether it's the vine or the leaf, the one ingredient contains the active DMT. The other one creates, what's the inhibitor? It's monoethyl whatever.
I don't. Yeah, no.
MOE inhibitor, whatever. It's
beyond my
as
knowledge.
It turns
right
out, the two of those synergistically create an effect, basically, where, like you said, the stomach won't destroy the DMT before it gets.
It'll actually absorb it now.
Before it can get absorbed by your bloodstream, basically, and take you on a trip.
Yeah.
And even not only that, but DMT naturally. I mean, I think you metabolize DMT naturally so quickly that you're literally completely down and back to normal within 15 minutes. But when you do it the way that it's prepared in that really thick, I mean, it's like almost tar-like from what I hear.
Yeah, it looks like you condensed chocolate milk.
Like kind of a weird, salty, sweet, like strange. Yeah, I've heard all kinds of.
Yeah.
But a very strong liquor that you have to drink. I think it's close to a liter of, if not more, per session.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't studied enough to know the specifics on that.
Because of the method they go through to make this stuff that apparently was given to them by the plants themselves. However, I'm not really sure how this worked out, but it happens to have, like, it basically has a 4-hour active period, and then after that, basically like another 4 hours on top of that, where you kind of have to process and go through an ordeal to come out the other side. So that's why you have like an 8 to 10 hour basically session. If you've seen this movie, you have, and there's actually a couple other movies on YouTube where you can watch.
Amazon's got they're all over the place.
Similar type of stories.
And that to me is like true shamanism, when they're doing it to heal, to truly heal. And yeah, in the movie The Last Shaman specific, the individual before doing actual ayahuasca with the shaman went through a multitude of different greens from the forest and whatnot, like that they picked fresh. Like it wasn't really that they
had to go through a
cultivated.
cleanse. Several
Smoking raw tobacco. So like you said, it's a different kind of tobacco. This is raw tobacco. There's no chemicals. It's just leaf taken, dried, rolled, and smoked. I mean, that's raw tobacco. So yeah, he went through a true full cleansing with herbs and tobaccos of like a couple of months.
Tobaccus rustica or something like that versus what's the other one? Whatever. The one that it sounds like nicotine is or whatever.
Yeah, I do not have that knowledge.
It's actually like when you see depictions of Native Americans smoking their peace pipe, like the kind of tobacco that they would put in there. And that kind of tobacco actually does have minor hallucinogenic properties.
Right. That's what they say.
Like that it
I have not found
in
out
itself
personally.
is a fairly strong, not a strong hallucinogen, but a fairly strong drug in itself.
In its ability for...
That it's got cleansing properties too.
Well, yeah. Well, but anything that's raw apparently is better for you, it seems to be. Which, in and of itself as an idea, I think makes quite a bit of sense. You specifically with your diet, you do quite a bit of raw.
I try.
Yeah.
I love potato chips.
There, I said it. I feel better about myself.
And French fries. Anyhow, are we off topic?
Well, but no, not really. I don't think so.
We're never off topic. That's
not really. That's the beauty of this show.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, so I going back to a point I think I made about being, because like you said, the fungus having that ability to talk, to have that neural network. If we as just even accidentally consuming that, causing us to be more aware, that in and of itself, I feel lends its hand to saying, yeah, we could have heard the plants talk. Like, 'cause I'll be honest, man, like when I go out and like hug trees and get into nature and like listen to the energies around me, if you put your hand on a tree, if you really listen, you can hear the tree, bro. Like, that's not a joke.
I've never actually had this happen, so I really can't say.
Oh, no, my amazing partner and I, like when we can, we get out and it's you go talk to the trees, hug a tree, touch a tree, be open.
Really sounding like a hippie now. I mean, it's all good because honestly, and I don't know why it's like uncool to think of nature when it's like you couldn't exist without it. The more of it dwindles away, the less we're going to be able to sustain life on this planet. It's a necessity.
This is where I believe in this earth so much that we are merely a cockroach to it. If we get too out of hand, she's gonna take care of herself. We'll be gone, and then she will heal herself again.
Oh, I'm not worried about the planet. I'm worried about our ability to continue living on it. That's the only thing. Well, and I'm not getting on a soapbox about that because I know.
Well, but I'm going to use that for a nice segue because we started getting into a conversation about like education, and that's like my hot button. I'm a firm believer that a proper future for our children's children is to start with education, period, to properly educate them. Because that's the thing is, instead of us trying to change the minds of the elders, we as the elders need to be shaping the minds of our children so that they in turn want to shape the minds of their children and so on, so that we literally all sharpen ourselves generation after generation. Instead of attempting to change the minds, I think we just need to start doing what's right and then let time work its way out. So I'm not going to see the fruits of my labor per se, but that's what I want to do. That's what I'm aiming for, making the world a better place, even if it's 3 or 5 or 12 generations from now.
I was trying to make a connection with the reason why we're doing this, right?
Sure, go ahead.
The connection revolved around the whole idea, you know, if you want to keep it on topic, so the whole idea of your consciousness, you know, being thrust into this expansive state due to the use of hallucinogenic drugs. That I liken that to the strength of that, the ability of it to create that reflective quality, where you've stepped out of yourself, you're viewing yourself from the outside, so to speak. But that the nature of that is in itself a dying art form, because we're all so busy kind of bombarding our senses with, you know, pointless videos, music, news, you know, what's the latest, greatest, this or that, and like we're always busying ourselves to the point where we can't just sit down and have a conversation. You know, like, it doesn't happen anymore. Like, the ability to have that enlightened moment where you can, hey, I never really thought about it that way. Why not? Well, probably because I never had the time to actually think about it. I never allow myself, I'm always busying myself with, oh look, The Magicians has new episodes, I'm gonna get caught up on that. Like, great show, by the way, but no, I'm not getting paid. Anyway, the whole idea and why I put it on such a pedestal is the fact that we need to get back to that. You know, the principles behind, you know, like all this entertainment that we busied ourselves with, it doesn't make us any better as people, certainly not. And the idea of people actually having thoughts of their own anymore is just, it's almost a novelty now when you see it happen. Like, oh, look at that, somebody had a thought of their own, that's beautiful. Like, it shouldn't be like that, you know what I mean? Like, we're losing our sense of connection, our sense of creativity, you know. I can't speak for everybody.
I'm agreeing. I'm
speaking for myself. Like, I'm trying to start treading water here and figuring out, like...
Well, that's why I say, to me, education is important in that sense.
Like,
we need to support our kids.
Like I think I was saying last time, and the conversation itself is part of the thought process. Like, sometimes if you've ever had to explain something to somebody else, like, you learned all kinds of stuff about engines and, you know, internal combustion engines and how they work, and you know them front to back. But like, then if you have to stand in front of a class and give a speech about a certain particular type of engine and what makes it stand out, you know, or a certain aspect of it, it's like, in a way, you learn more about trying to pass on that knowledge, because it's like, you know what I mean? Now I'm thinking about it, and I'm, you know, yeah. I have to basically take all that stuff that I've learned, and I have to put it in my own words and express that to you.
Yeah, they call this synthesis.
Yeah.
Right, that's the college word. Synthesis. I was, more times than not, that's what I was told by my professor. They're like, I'll be honest with you, the way I set up my course, I'm looking for synthesis, and I'm just like, is this something they all get paid to say?
Synthesis.
But that's
synthesis,
taking the information that they're giving you and then showing your working knowledge of it, your ability to utilize it, right? Which I think that was that one video we watched a little bit ago as we were taking our break, where it's finding out how we think as opposed to like what we think, right? Using that knowledge. And to me, that's the...
Yeah, Neil deGrasse, yeah.
Yeah, but that's that thing, is education to me is opening up consciousness or being more aware. So that's a beautiful thing in that sense. Why I really agree with that idea. To me, that's educating, is offering all the options for knowledge, and not just the knowledge itself as data, but the ability to have that knowledge, like how we can ingest it. So we need a greater support system because we don't all think alike. Right? We all have different processes that our brains and bodies and, you know, that the chemical makeup, the DNA, our person. So we have to accept that there is a multitude of ways of understanding knowledge, and we have to accept that and do, you know what I mean? Like we all.
Well, do you see what I'm saying though about how to in a way that the conversation itself gets you thinking in along lines that maybe you wouldn't have, because now you have to try and take something that's conceptual and you have to form it into something that's, well, conceptual on the other end, but you basically have to break it down.
You have to paint a word picture.
You have to break it down, create something new with it, and still be able to anyway.
Yeah, I love those ideas. Yeah, and I agree. To me, I really liked the idea of being in a classroom. Once I started to really enjoy education, I enjoyed being in a classroom because I like having alternate perspectives. Having you explain it the way your mind accepts that knowledge gives me a better understanding of what that means, because now I've had the teacher tell me, but now I've had, Johnny or Sally or whoever in my class is like, hey, but so it's really like this. And it's like, actually, yes, that is. And it's like, I like that because it gives me additional perspectives that maybe I never even would have thought of. And now I have it as just knowledge and I can use that. I agree, man. So, I mean, on both sides, so you as the professor expelling this information, it's great for them, but then you as the person in the audience having additional members also, so to me, yeah, just talking about it, just expressing knowledge and information and just talking, communicating properly between people, that's a beautiful thing.
Well, the concept that it actually becomes a part of the completed thought process. Like you had noticed earlier, you were viewing a conversation we had previously, and in the conversation, as you're trying to prove a point, you realized you disproved yourself.
I did do that, and I said it twice. I admitted it.
But this is what I'm saying, though, that sometimes it's in this conversational concept, that this construct that we put together, that you're able to do that. And because it's this kind of environment, it's not like you don't feel like you have to defend like your horse has already lost the race and died. You don't have to sit there and defend it from all the other horses trampling it. Just get off the freaking racetrack, dude.
Right. Yeah.
Anyhow.
Yeah, that's excuse me. Right. I like, that's a pretty good analogy. I like that. Well, so we're all right. So now we're at a place where we can kind of agree that consciousness has given us the greater ability for knowledge, or at least the use of, or the creation of, but I would agree that I think we're on a whole, as all society together, all humans, we could be utilizing the idea of consciousness and awareness to a greater purpose, and we're not, because we are distracted, which some would say is built into the system. But you and I had this conversation before about 80-20. All systems, no matter what they are, they have been proven over and over again, because all systems show us this. There is a mathematical, just it's gonna come out where there'll be a difference, and an egregious one at that. Like, that's just how it happens. That's the natural balance of things, it seems. Oh, the
Pareto principle?
Well, that's one of them, because
it's called the 80-20 rule. It's also known as the Pareto principle.
So you can utilize that in different fashions.
Which asserts that 80% of outcomes or outputs result from 20% of all causes or inputs for any given event. In business, a goal of the 80-20 rule is to identify inputs that are potentially the most productive and make them the priority. So while that's going into the whole
That goes into
the
that's a common thing, is to utilize the 80-20 in business.
80% of outcomes come from 20% of causes. So to look at a population, you're considering 100%, 80% of those people, or 80% of the product you can get from 100 workers is coming from 20 of those workers.
I'm not quite sure. I mean,
that's it. Basically, it's what, right? 80-20. Am I getting that wrong? Maintains that 80% of outcomes come from 20% of causes. So 80% of your workflow is actually passing through mostly 20% of your employee base. This is just using that as an example.
All right, so I'll give you, from a business standpoint, the utilization of 80-20, and then I will attempt to do also a societal 80-20. In business, you're attempting to make 80% of your revenue from 20% of your customers. That's an amazing ideal, right? Because that's what you call loyal repeat customers, right? So if you're literally making 80% of your business off of 20% of your people, like that's you pinpointing your demographic specifically for the product you're making. Like, this is an idea that they look towards. Like, that's what you aim for, right?
Well, and your demographic is determined by your regular patron, basically.
Well, I give you this service. You, as that small class that seems to keep coming back, is now telling me, oh, I want to keep doing this.
Right, but it's through your activity that makes you on that list, basically. It's not like...
Well, they tell you what you're doing if you're paying attention, and that's what you do, and that's why you modify your products. Which is, another thing we were watching, where, why they all of a sudden make bad products. It's like, well, because people are paying for it. So there you go. Not always, but sometimes. So then also the 80-20 in life, in a sense. There is a small majority of individuals that can make choices that will affect like 80% of the population, right? So we can look at COVID as the example right now. So there's less than 20%, like the small majority of people that make decisions. Their decisions are the ones that are affecting 80% of us as, our culture and society. So it's very small pebble, really big ripple.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what the rule of 80-20 is, in a sense.
Right.
Those are my, to get you to understand, that's, anybody who's listening, if you got better examples, please go ahead, throw it in the comments. We don't care. I will read them. Someone's going to read them.
Well, that's kind of the way I heard it described before. Like, if you look at a population that they're producing things along a good rate, they have a good working class, they can make money, but overall, out of the entire population of working class, you would have roughly 20% of those people that actually can make innovations, that will actually step outside of the boundaries of normal, workflow and say, can we do this better? That's the concept too, that it can be applied. It can be applied to any aspect of creativity, to any aspect of, and like we were saying before, that principle continues to cut 20%. What did you call that? The
standard deviation.
Standard deviation.
Yeah. There's always a given. It's usually somewhere around 7 to 10%. It's just I think that's a common. It really is. But and so and I like that analogy that you drew with that, and that's very true. I think that's a decent way to explain it as well. I think another idea is that 20% of your population will produce 80% of the goods that are consumed or something. There's so many ways to look at it, and really what it comes down to is I think when I said it the one time, it's the 80-20, the easiest way to look at it is there's always going to be a little that have a lot and a lot that have a little. Like, that's just the way the system kind of balances out. Unfortunately, when there's things available, there's always going to be a sense of value because somebody's going to want it. And there's going to be a certain amount of individuals, which is not a lot, that are going to want it more than all of the others. That's why the little will always have a lot, because they really, really want it and they go after it. And then the a lot will have a little because they're just like, well, there's not a lot of it, and it kind of does, but it's, well, whatever, who cares? And it just kind of fades away. They don't have a real true want for it. They it's there and it's usable. Cool, I dig it. I mean, you can look at money. Money's like that. That's why there's a small amount of people that have all of the money and a large amount of people that only have some of the money. 80-20.
Well, it's a natural distribution.
But that's what I'm saying. Any system, that's pretty much going to be, eventually that's going to be the outcome. So
well, and this leads back to our other taboo conversation we were having about, if what you're trying to track is equal opportunity, I'm all about it.
Right. Not equal outcome, equal opportunity.
Right, because you can't say, okay, well, it doesn't matter what kind of input you put into trying to get a job or trying to do that job well, to the point where your influence makes that place better.
Yeah, I think
like
Jordan,
having pride in what you do.
Right. I think Jordan Peterson put it as if you basically remove like the incentive system or whatever, or you no longer give cause to want to do better, innovation literally just like suffocates, because now there's no point to it. No, what do I care? I already got what I need.
And this is somebody who's living in Canada that's saying this, which is impressive.
That's just, he doesn't mean that. Canada, we love you. We really
do.
no,
it's not. There's no issues here with Canada, but I mean, I'm sorry, am I getting this wrong? They're somewhat socialist? I mean, they have socialist, well, they have a health system that's basically...
Well, they have I think they call it socialized medicine.
Socialized medicine.
Because everybody is allotted. Like everybody.
So I don't want to offend any Canadians out there. I'm sorry if I overstepped there for a minute, but that is impressive because they don't, yes. Anyhow.
Well, and so even bigger point, I believe the 80-20 at some, if you look at any system, dictatorship, communism, socialism, Buddhism, I don't know what. If you look at an ism to be a system for a society, eventually you will still get the 80-20, meaning that even in a system where everything's supposed to be fair and balanced, right, where everything is socialized, everybody gets everything, there's still going to be a few people in that system that are going to have more. It's just going to happen.
Like you said, it's a naturally occurring distribution. Even
if it means that they become, thievery in a sense, and they just start pilfering and just taking extra. Like it happens. It's a natural balance.
But I mean, and part of the problem is, and I think we've brought this on ourselves, is that we've balanced our entire system on the principle that of fiat money. Which really, money means absolutely nothing.
Especially if we're talking about consciousness.
And right? Like people that have gobs of money will tell you that they're like, money means absolutely nothing.
It was, I think even Jim Carrey. Right?
It's power. It's what you're talking about is not. You can't eat money. Money's not going to keep you warm at night. You know what I mean? Your value to your community is what you can provide, and people need connection, people need protection, people need food,
food, shelter, safety,
like
the basics.
Tick off all the basics, like right. And well, whether we like to admit it or not, we are in a consumer driven world in the West.
Oh, very much.
If it doesn't make money, or
well, I think that goes back to when you said distractions.
I'm thinking,
distraction.
What was the the joke back in the day if somebody wanted to ride in your car? Was it
ass, gas, or grass? Nobody rides for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the bumper sticker. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody pays for something.
It's only fair, right?
I mean, I think just being giving is only fair on all ends. But that's that's me. That's where I want to go. That's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. Is this is me giving back. You know, it might seem like mindless chatter to some, or exquisite poetry of any sense. I don't know.
Hey,
the simple fact is, I'm putting my good out there, and I hope it makes the world a better place.
I count my lucky stars if I've got 3 fans. That's awesome. It's all good. I mean, I don't know.
I'm a fan. You're a fan. Wouldn't you want to be a fan too?
If it crashes and burns, I don't know.
I'm taking you all with me.
No, I mean it's not picking my pocket, and this stuff is going to some use. That's for sure.
That's the plan. Yeah. That is the plan.
But anyhow,
yeah.
I think there's way too much speculation. We don't get ahead of ourselves, but I like where it's headed. I mean, honestly, we're doing a little bit more meandering.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
okay.
We're we came into it. Let's talk about consciousness, and I think we did a great job about that, just to get the conversation started. The idea of expanding our consciousness, modifying us in a Darwinian sense, so that we have larger skulls, less muscle structure. That's kind of makes that's a pretty awesome case, right? I think that's a decent amount of evidence.
It's interesting. It's an interesting theory to think about. I mean, you can't say that anything's really been proven to that effect, but it's an interesting theory to think about that quite possibly all these new neural pathways that we've learned were because of our distant cousin, the mushroom. Who knows? All right.
It's DNA is, it could be one extra here, there, a swap of this or that, and it's like next thing you know, you're a frog, right? Like we know that, and so like yeah, but and I going to the Fibonacci thing and like how just there seems to be a sense of rules for the construct of the system that we work within. To me, that's like that's the commonality. So that's why the Fibonacci sequence might explain it, in a mathematical reference, but the fact that you look at a tree and its root system is just like its upper skeletal section that's up and off the dirt, where it's the branches and all the main trunks, and the fact that it also looks like bronchial systems in your lungs, which to me, trees are making air, right? Like they're moving air in and out. They're right, causing they're basically like lungs, right?
A naturally occurring fractal shape. Like you can say that the whole universe is built out of fractals. There's people that have written books about it. You could break everything down into terms of fractals.
Yeah, I don't think that's we think we might be at a spot where it's
yeah, I think we're just getting tired and running out of steam. I am anyway.
Yeah, and again, this was a great start to the idea of what consciousness is and being aware, right? I like where we went with it, so
we're not gonna always come back to it. But
we not that we can, we will. That's a given.
Maybe if I end up going over it again and in review, if I find a lot more information on it, then maybe
of course
I'll revisit it. But
and like you said, eventually, as
never push in that direction, but.
Right, well, and eventually as others kind of chime in, like, hey, you guys started to say something like this, but you never came back around. Can you come back around again? Well, yeah, we will.
Yeah, like, where's the science to this? And it's like, oh, okay, I guess I got to do a little homework.
Well, and so now this, I think, is a great avenue of, if we get into one of those capacities, let's reach out to local individuals, right? People that are readily available here in our community. We're talking about that, supporting our community. That's a huge thing for me. if we have those kind of individuals and we start to get into those questions, by all means, you know what, let's bring on a specialist of sorts and let them just have at it and just kind of drop the knowledge for all of us. That's a great way to educate, support local, and entertain, which is what I'm all about. So, and I think this show is definitely doing that. It's a beautiful thing. But yeah, so consciousness, start of the conversation. That's pretty dope. We're getting there. Mr. Gemini, always a pleasure. Until the next time. We'll talk to you all later.